Thank you for starting the recording. This is Chairwoman Melissa Caprillion, and you are in October 20th Government Services meeting. As we stated, this meeting is being recorded, and also who I see present is Vice Chair Scott Meyer from the 16th District. We have Secretary Nick Dembski from the 1st District, Fabi Maldonado, John Wish, Steve Smetana, and Youth and Governance Representative Willow Newell, and IT and MT Boyle, and a couple representatives from the Sheriff's Department. I am stating this just because this is a recording, this is virtual. We may have some call-ins as well to just be respectful for the format in which we have. Before you are to speak, would you mind stating your name beforehand? Because sometimes it's not always noticeable who is the one that is speaking. I'm going to start this meeting by asking our Youth and Governance representative to please read the statement.
Hi, this is Youth and Governance member Willow Newell. Hello, we are the members of the Racine County Youth and Governance Program, and we will be participating in tonight's meeting. This program serves to empower youth in Racine County by encouraging us to participate in local government. We have agreed to abide by the applicable standards of conduct that would govern any elected county board member. While we are encouraged to participate and are allowed to have a non-binding advisory vote on matters before the committee, all formal action taken by this committee will be based solely on the binding votes made by county board supervisors.
Chairwoman Melissa Caprillion, thank you so much, Willow. The next, we're just going to ask if there is any public comment. There is some public comment. I ask that you just unmute yourself and speak, but it looks like I'm just in the attendee list right now. You may not have that. So I will close out public comment. And next we have any chair comments. My question would be to this committee, is this start time of 6 o'clock conducive to your schedules? The only reason I ask is every Tuesday I am in a prior meeting and I'm usually cutting that meeting short. And I just wanted to play around with the possibility to start this meeting at the same time that our county board meeting meets at 6:30. I am still okay with jumping from one meeting to the next if it does not work in your schedule, but I thought maybe I would feel it out. Do we have any comments?
Supervisor Maldonado, I really don't. So.
Is there any other supervisor who may have a preference one way or the next?
Supervisor Dembski, I would just say that I think earlier works better for me typically. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Supervisor Meyer here. 6 works well for me as well, but we can be flexible if we have to at certain times. Thank you.
Chairwoman Caprillion, I really appreciate your comments, and I will not make the decision without continuing this discussion with the whole committee. So please know that. As of right now, the next meeting will be at 6 unless we further this discussion and it's decided by the group. So thank you for allowing that discussion. The next is the approval of the minutes. So we would need a motion, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion by Supervisor Smetana and a second by Supervisor Maldonado. I would just ask if there's no discussion, all those in favor, just go ahead and raise your hand for an aye at this time. Thank you. Thank you. It looks like we have no nays, so that has been approved. We will move on to old business. And with that old business, for us to resume consideration of the ordinance, we would need a supervisor to go ahead and take that off the table. And I'm going to call upon Vice Chair Supervisor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I was in request to bring ordinance 2020-XX back up for discussion. I was hoping that in this last time between our previous meeting and this meeting that people would have a chance to look a little further deeper into the reasons why we should update this ordinance, and if they had a chance to look into state ordinance, the 938-343, in regards to some of the discussion that we had, very robust discussion back and forth in regards to possible forfeitures and fines. I did reach out to Corporation Counsel, and I was hoping they'd be involved with us tonight to go ahead and go through some of the information that they found. I do have some notes that they did pass along. Since they are not here present with us, I can go through some of those things. And it was just kind of leading up to just some of the information we could actually find over the past 6 to 7 years in regards to citations that were issued for forfeiture over the last 6 to 7 years for the county. It goes back
Supervisor Meyer, I apologize for cutting you off. I will just, I'm going to give you back the floor, but I'm going to take that as a motion and just ask for a second of the motion to continue this discussion. Okay, that was Supervisor Smetana seconding that. So there is a motion to continue this discussion to then before we vote. It seems like Supervisor Meyer just wants to speak on that motion to bring this off the table. So please continue, Supervisor Meyer.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I guess I kind of got off the beaten track there. Again, I was just hoping that Corporation Counsel would be with us tonight to kind of give some of the more detailed information that we could get. Again, past 6 to 7 years, historically, there was approximately 20 citations issued for the tobacco ordinance. And now we can't even issue any tickets due to the vaping or the nicotine ordinance that we're trying to update our ordinance for. It goes back to 2014 with approximately the information that we can get from the clerk reports from Sam. They had 2 males back in 2014. In 2015, they had 1 male, 1 female. 2016, they had 2 females, 1 male. 2017, 2 males, 2 females. 2018, 3 males. 2019, 1 male and 5 females. And 2020, looks like they also had 1 citation at this time. So I know there was some discussion in regards to fees and penalties as far as being kind of a hindrance at this point as far as moving forward in this ordinance, but I just hope that some of the information that we have to show that it's not every child that was, brought into, I don't want to say detention or to custody, that they weren't all just charged with a fine. There was other options and other avenues that they could use this updated ordinance for. And I see that we have Lieutenant Evans with us tonight. Maybe he could speak to that a little bit as well.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Meyer. What I'm going to first do is we have a motion and a second on the floor right now just to bring this back off the table into discussion. So I'm just going to quickly ask us to vote on that and we'll continue our discussion. So all those in favor of bringing this ordinance back onto the agenda for discussion, please go ahead and raise your hand with an aye. That would represent an aye. Okay. Is there a nay? Anyone that is not in favor? I would just ask Supervisor Spencer, how do you wish to vote, please? Your hand was kind of in suspension the whole time. Okay, in favor. Thank you so much. Youth and governance, how do you wish to vote? Okay, in favor. Fantastic. We will go ahead and move forward now just with the continued discussion. There is someone from corporate counsel here. Erica is here to speak as well. I don't know, Supervisor Meyer had presented the 2 from the Sheriff's Department, but if Erica, if you had something you would like to say to lead into that discussion, that'd be fine. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. This is Erica Mach. I am here on behalf of Corporation Counsel. Attorney Sarkatich tonight had an event for his son. It's his senior year, so I happily covered for him this evening, and as have been involved in a majority of this research, especially since the last meeting where a lot of these questions came up. I did, depending on the committee's questions or how you would like the discussion to move forward, I think I'll just take the committee's lead. I believe Supervisor Meyer did a good job of summarizing kind of the data that we received. In addition to that, I did connect with the Racine County District Attorney's Office, who typically handles the disposition of these tickets, and kind of got a rundown from George Yee. He is the legal support coordinator who kind of sets the guidelines for disposition of these types of citations. So I can offer that to the committee. I can also give some more examples or, some further information on that Wisconsin statute 938.343, which kind of discusses the potential dispositions that can be issued by the court in the event that this citation is issued, and then some other information as well that I worked with Lieutenant Evans on this afternoon to just kind of discuss where and in which jurisdictions this citation would potentially be applicable, because there are the statute does kind of provide for some more stringent guidelines there as well. So I have all that information. What the committee would want, or what kind of questions they would have, I'll leave that to you, and happily answer anything that I can.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. This is again Chairwoman Melissa Caprillion. Maybe I'll open it up to the committee now. Do you have some questions that can kind of help direct some response from any of our guests? I see no hands that have been raised at this time, but please feel free to unmute yourself if you are not using the hand raising feature, and you will be recognized. Until I see that, does either the sergeant and lieutenant have any contribution you would like to add to this discussion? Oh, I apologize. Hold on one second, if you don't mind. I'm going to recognize one of our committee members, Supervisor Smentana. He did put his hand up.
Thank you. Attorney Mach, could you tell me, you mentioned that this ordinance can only work in some areas. Could you please expand on that?
Sure. Of course. So, as it states in the ordinance, this is subject to, or this ordinance is actually enacted under Wisconsin Statute 254-92. And under that statute, there's a limitation that the county's ordinance can only be enforceable if another municipality does not have a similar also have an ordinance enacted in it under 254 as well. So out of the 17 municipalities in Racine County, I looked at and researched all of those municipalities to see which of those have adopted an ordinance that would essentially preclude this county ordinance from being enforceable. And there are 4 that have enacted an ordinance that includes specifically this language of nicotine product, and that's the city of Racine, the village of Caledonia, the village of Waterford, and the village of Union Grove. Obviously, if the county has jurisdiction in those municipalities in some other capacity. So for example, in a county park that would be located in the city of Racine, this ordinance would still be enforceable in that jurisdiction. But if, let's say, the sheriff's office would have some sort of permissible capacity in the city of Racine to enforce other regulations, this would not be one of them because that's precluded by law. So because the city of Racine has enacted that ordinance, this ordinance could not be enforced as well. That would have to be through their law enforcement. The other jurisdictions, there's actually quite a few that have ordinances that are similar to ours now, which have not been updated to include this nicotine product. City of Burlington, Yorkville, Sturtevant, Raymond, Norway, Burlington, Waterford, Wind Point, Rochester. A lot of their ordinances are exactly like ours as they stand today, and they just don't have that nicotine product update. And then there's actually 4 that don't have any ordinances at all. And as a result of that, potentially the county, if it would be, there's other rules that apply here, the county could enforce this ordinance, and that would be the Village of Mount Pleasant, the town of Dover, the Village of North Bay, and the Village of Elmwood Park, should that, permission be granted to the sheriff's office there. So I do think it's a unique, you don't see, that's something that's unique, I think, to the statute. It's not, I wouldn't say it's uncommon, but it certainly is, defining the lines between these municipalities and really giving this power to, whatever municipality wants to take that enforcement there. So by updating this and revising this, you can see we'd align with, 4 of the municipalities located within the county. But many of them are still kind of in the same situation that we are, that Racine finds itself in its ordinance here.
Great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
This is Chairwoman Melissa Caprillion once again. I just want to apologize. I recognize, Jody, we're so excited to see you join this committee, and I may have recognized you as a committee member, and I just want to apologize. We also had Supervisor Kramer, I saw jump aboard. I'm not sure if he is still with us, but I did want to recognize that you are here, and thank you so much. Is there anyone else who may have some questions, or I would like to allow those from the sheriff's office to speak if they would like, the sergeant? And either one. Thank you.
I can wait for any questions if there are any. This is Lieutenant Evans from the sheriff's office. Nice to meet all of you. If I haven't met you, I believe this is my first time being in front of you.
Yes.
I think one of the things that Erica and I had talked about earlier today is that the goal of this is not to create new enforcement. This is enforcement that already exists within the state statutes. This is a way for us to bring enforcement local and to protect the health of our youth. The whole goal of this is to stop kids from using something that everybody knows is going to kill them. It's to slow down that, I guess, the pipeline to the grave from lung cancer or otherwise. So I think that when you look at this, I just did a quick search. When you think about some of the places she talked that we can't use this ordinance, such as the city of Racine, we had 232 calls from May 1st, which is basically when Quarry Lake opens, until now. There's 232 times that we've been to Quarry Lake Park, the vast majority of them for kids that are jumping off of the cliff, which is dangerous in and of itself. And then quite often we find them with other things. This just adds to that. And I think that, as we move forward, we're going to find new ways to ingest different chemicals, and all of us as consenting adults, sometimes we enjoy doing that. However, for our youth, we put a restriction on that. And I think that this just goes hand in hand with it. It's an intelligent decision, and I'm glad this committee is considering it.
Thank you for your contribution. Again, this is Chairwoman Melissa Caprillion. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this ordinance? Lieutenant Evans? That was you, you spoke, right? So, and Schmidt, is there anything that you would like to add?
As Sergeant Schmidt, no, I think Lieutenant Evans summed up our position very well.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, if we have no one else who has any questions, okay, we have Supervisor Dembski. Please, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairwoman Caprillion. So I just want to speak to this this resolution or this ordinance. I'm sorry. I'm happy that it's getting reconsidered. I know that I suspect it's going to pass through the committee and probably pass through our board. And I'm very grateful for Attorney Mosh and Attorney Sergentine who took some time with me over the last month to talk about this once or twice. I think I'm getting some feedback from someone or other. Looks like that's resolved. So I am, I'm of two minds with this ordinance change, and ultimately I think I'm going to be deciding to vote against it. And I just want to speak a little bit to why that is. Obviously, I think, again, everyone on the, we said this last time, everyone on this committee understands the positives of this, like what we hope it will do, right? Sort of as Lieutenant just astutely said, is disincentivize young people from using something that is bad for their health, like the pipeline to the grave, I think he said, which absolutely, it is not unclear to me that is the appealing part of this, for sure. So I think probably, judging from the conversation we had last month, that my perspective of why I would vote against it is still, for the most part, unclear to maybe some of my colleagues on the committee. So like I say, I'll talk about that a little bit, not because I'm trying to convince anyone otherwise, because I don't think I will do that. For one thing, like I said, I think this is going to pass, but just so that we have that public dialogue, and so that it's in the record for anyone who decides they want to watch a government services committee meeting in the future. So, in general, what I'll say about this is, I study in terms of policy, probably the policy patterns that I pay the most attention to have to do with criminal justice. And as the attorneys have, really helpfully explained to me and to our committee more than once, this is not really a criminal issue, right? This isn't a criminal justice issue. It's more a civil issue. I'll talk about that a little bit more and how I think that line gets blurred a little bit sometimes. But I'll talk about this in terms of criminal justice anyways, if you'll excuse that for the moment. So the policy that I pay attention to and the policy thinkers, the research around punitive action just shows that, whether in the criminal justice field or otherwise, basically, the research over and over again is coming up showing this has negligible effects on crime rates, sort of in general, but also on behavior change, right? And that is even more true in certain ways. So for incarceration, that's especially true. For economic punishment models, that's especially true. But around young people, that's especially true too. And it's, there are other places where it's true too, but I'll just leave it at that. Young people, in part because their minds aren't fully formed yet, and they don't always operate by the same logic patterns that we think, like, well, this is how I would think, so this is how anyone potentially enduring this punishment would think. So in a very broad sense, that is something that I'm approaching this with. So I'll start with that. The piece about, well, why is that a concern when this isn't a criminal issue, but this is a civil issue? And I have shared this with the attorneys. I think I might have mentioned it at our last meeting. But in the city of Racine, at least, and I don't know, I know that this won't apply in the city of Racine. I don't know how this applies elsewhere in the county, but I have definitely been hearing from community organizations that work with young people, specifically work in the schools, that some young people, especially economically disadvantaged young people who have been seeing tickets like this ordinance would allow, because it has to allow, as the attorneys have explained to me based on statute. A lot of these young people who are seeing these tickets are seeing them, if they aren't paid, seeing them develop into bench warrants right when they're either going to graduate or about to graduate or something like that, turning 18. That's something that I feel like I could afford to learn more about. It sounded like the attorneys didn't know a ton about that, so we weren't able together anyways to get too deeply into that. So that's one other element that has me concerned about this. I wasn't the person who asked for data on this. I wasn't really expecting to do that. Supervisor Maldonado brought that up, and the attorneys kind of just generously offered that to me when we had our conversation too. And I was surprised to see that there was a disproportion of people of color being affected by this. It was not the majority of, I think they went over maybe the last 5 years of people who had even been picked up in this. It was not the majority, but it was certainly a disproportion based off of, it was like all west of the eye, right? So ultimately, I think the last thing I'll say about this is this sort of policy puts this in the hands on a local level. I think as the representatives from the sheriff's office have already said, this sort of exists on a statutory level, but it puts it in the hands of criminal justice again. When I really think of this as a public health issue and a public education issue also. And I'm just, we've already overburdened law enforcement with the responsibility of addressing every public ill at this point, from homelessness to mental illness to all sorts of things that, if we go further back in policy history, like just weren't the realm, weren't the responsibility or the burden of law enforcement. So this seems like it's come out of, it sounded like, at least from when it was presented at the last government services meeting, that this kind of came out of school behavior issues, and that was who was reaching into law enforcement to ask for an ordinance change around this with more teeth. And ultimately, I just don't want to be making policy that continues pushing school behavior issues onto law enforcement. So I'll leave it at that. I only even offer these words just because I know that I imagine, at least it seemed like from the last conversation, that the people, other people on the committee, just didn't even have a framework to relate to my perspective on this. Maybe these 5 minutes of talking or whatever still doesn't really have to change that perspective or anything. But I wanted to at least offer my perspective for what it's worth on that, so you know where I'm coming from. Thank you all very much for listening.
Chairwoman Melissa Caprillion. Thank you, Supervisor Dembski. It is worth quite a bit, so we appreciate this is where it should happen, where we feel comfortable that we can go into detail where we're coming from, just so we can open up to new perspectives. So I do welcome the conversation to continue if there's anyone else who would like to speak on it.
This is Erica Mott from Corporation Counsel, if I may.
Yes, please continue.
Thank you. Supervisor Dembski, I definitely appreciated our conversation and all the time that you took with us that day. I took very seriously some of the concerns that you raised, and I was probably one of the few law students that took a sentencing theory class and took a lot of philosophical theory classes. So I certainly appreciate the thoughtfulness that you've put behind this. And so in light of that, I did do that research to kind of provide information on those collateral consequences that you just discussed, right? So it is absolutely a concern of many that an unpaid citation would result in a bench warrant and then potentially, lead to incarceration or other collateral consequences. In law, that's what they're called, right? They're not something that's necessarily a direct effect of a certain citation being issued. That would be the fine. But a collateral consequence could be that you get your driver's license suspended, or like you said, you get a bench warrant and you end up in jail. There's certain collateral consequences that can certainly be associated with this. I think what's interesting about 938 is that the collateral consequences are very different than the citations that would be issued for typically like adults, like your typical FOs, even your traffic citations, or a citation for disorderly conduct, or a citation for possession of drugs. Because these are issued under juvenile citations, the collateral consequences are actually limited. And so when I was speaking with George Yee today, I I think everybody knows that, including Lieutenant Evans reminded me that we had a few cases together. I was a prosecutor, and in that office, there was often, with juveniles especially, this recognition that this isn't something we necessarily want to perpetuate, right? If we can disincentivize this behavior in other ways, how can we do that, right? So hopefully, getting treatment programs, drug courts, and having support for those issues. So when I spoke to George today, who is the person who always handles these JOs, he's the only person from that office. I, as a prosecutor, if I would have picked up that ticket, I would have handed it to George. And for these citations, he stated the following: for any person who comes to court, which is, essentially just to come to negotiate the ticket, any person that is 16 years or under, he always offers them the option of community service. And he requires 20 hours of community service. They can do it at any entity that would be either a 501c3, their church, or any other entity that would seem appropriate. And if they return with a certification that they've completed that, he dismisses the ticket. If they come to court and they are 17 years of age, he typically negotiates the fine to $0. So the forfeiture itself, he actually takes down to $0. Of course, because there are, court assessments and penalty assessments that have to be imposed as well. It doesn't mean that they don't pay anything. The total, though, the lowest he said they can go is $143.80. So I recognize that, that's still $143 is and can be a substantial amount. But those are typically the guidelines that he follows. Now, in the event that if a juvenile fails to pay these forfeitures, it actually won't result in a bench warrant. What happens is the judge or the circuit court has the authority, if they wish, to actually suspend an operating privilege or a driver's license for up to 2 years. So that's actually the suspension that occurs. And again, as a collateral consequence, you can imagine what those may be if that occurs. And then, of course, to reinstate that license, there's certain things that a person may have to do, including potentially a reinstatement fee by the DMV. But I just thought I'd share that information just to kind of give a little more context about that 938 statute and the juvenile collateral consequences that exist, because I think the other collateral consequences that are often discussed are certainly applicable and certainly relevant to the discussion. But with this 938 statute, it's quite a bit different. And here, where the forfeiture is actually permitted under 938 to be $0, that's something quite unique as well. Often you'll see in other statutes, whether they be for civil or criminal citations, there can be fines sometimes not less than $50 or $100. So I think that's a unique move here by the legislature that is maybe trying to address or impose some of those policies, Supervisor Dembski, that you're talking about, just to allow the courts that, ability to employ those other actions as well. So I just thought I'd share that. Thank you.
Chairwoman Melissa Caprillion, thank you for that contribution to the discussion. Is there anyone else who has a question or comment? If not, I would ask, this is an item that does need a motion.
Motion to approve.
And second.
Okay, there's been a motion by Supervisor Smetana and a second by Supervisor Meyer to approve. Is there any other further discussion before I call the question? Without seeing none, I'm going to ask Youth and Governance representative to please state how you vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you for that. All right, now for the committee, all those in favor, Please, if you wish it to be aye, raise your hand at this time now so I can see. We have 3 in favor. I am going to ask those that oppose, raise your hand now too as well. Okay, we have 2 against. The motion does pass. Thank you so much, and thank you for all those who've contributed and for the information gathered, and also for our guests for taking part in this meeting and providing information. You can stick around if you would like, or you are free to leave as well. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
You too. Very good, thank you. The next on the agenda is we have the Youth and Governance Annual Report. Pam is here with us, and I am going to allow her to go ahead and have the floor. Pam, I'll just ask, and it's okay if you don't, but if you had anything to share, I know you're quite skilled at being able to share your screen. You're free to do that if you feel it will help. So,
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairwoman Caprellian. I'm Pam Larson speaking, and thank you for having me tonight. I always look forward to giving the annual report. It was in your board packet, or your committee packet, I should say, and so if you've had a chance to look at it, but nonetheless, I am going to share highlights with you, and then I will entertain questions at the end. So the report was for the 2019-2020 group. They're the group that you saw in May who gave their report to the board. There were 21 nominators who nominated 66 youth. So that was exciting, a nice number there. There were 9 freshmen, 12 sophomore, and 45 juniors. Out of those 66 nominations, 24 youth submitted applications. And so that's 36%. So that's something I'd like to see higher. Some years we do have more youth who will submit applications. But for that group, it was 36%. Out of the 24 who submitted applications, 18 were interviewed, and that's 75%. A couple just for whatever reason had changed their mind or couldn't make the date. We did offer, just so you know, the opportunity to interview virtually, and some youth did take advantage of that and took us up on our offer. And I see us, if we are back to interviewing in person, which I hope we are in the spring, being able to offer that option as well, because that way we can interview more youth. And there were 6 female and 4 males who ended up serving their 1-year term. Every year we do administer a survey, and there are 8 indicators on the survey that measure growth in civic engagement. And I'm happy to report that there was growth in all 8 indicators. The top 4 areas that increased were knowledge about Racine County government, youth being aware of local issues that affect Racine County, the opinion that their opinion can make a difference, and that they feel a strong connection to Racine County. So those were the top 4 areas of growth. In regards to leadership, there are 6 indicators, and there was growth in 5 out of 6 indicators. The other one was exactly the same. And that just tells me that youth self-assessed, reflected, and felt that they already had that leadership skill. The top 2 areas with the most growth were talk knowledgeably with others about local issues and can be a resource to people in Racine County. If you will see in the report on page 4 and page 5 that there's 2 areas that have an asterisk by it. There was one youth who did give 2 votes. That's not the word I'm looking for, but they marked in 2 different columns. So I wanted you to be aware of it. It wasn't a miscount by any means, but I did want to honor that. And so just counted it as that's how they felt. And so just wanted to reflect that in there. Also, you'll see along the sides the comments. And so when you have an opportunity to be able to read those comments, it's great to hear what youth have to say about their experience. And I was happy to see too, they really feel strongly about the effective job that you all are doing in local government. And so that's highlighted on there as well. And that they really feel that Racine County government works effectively and well, and more effective than some other government entities. We'll just say that. Page 6, just to be able to explain this, all the indicators are listed, and what we're looking for is a change in growth. And the good news is no one felt they went backwards. Everyone grew, or at least remained the same in that particular skill or ability. And so just recognizing that so that's why sometimes there's no growth or no change in growth, but then sometimes someone moved over one level or two or more. So areas where there was the most growth were, again, knowledge about Racine County government, all 6 youth. Oh, and I'll comment on that. All 10 youth received the survey. And one challenge with us being in shelter in place was getting the surveys back. Typically, they fill them out at orientation and recognition. They're there in person. I also give them personal hard copies at our group meetings in advance, so they have plenty of time. This year, I switched it all to an electronic survey and sent it out several times with reminders and the links, and received 6 out of 10 back. So I would have liked to have seen a higher response rate, but was happy that I had the 6. And what's really important is we like to keep the survey anonymous. So it wasn't like I could call and say, oops, notice you haven't completed your survey, please do so, nor to just ask them personally and have them answer all the questions to me alone. So just want you to understand why there's only 6 surveys this year, because typically we have a higher response rate. So again, knowledge about Racine County government, highest, as well as being aware of local issues that affect Racine County. And then for leadership, they feel they can be a resource to people in Racine County. We had 2 youth who showed 2 units or more of positive change. So that's page 6 to have you understand that. Page 7 had some wonderful quotes. Kudos to all of you. You make and you make our youth feel very welcomed. They feel comfortable that they can ask you questions, and they appreciate that. They feel that they are invited to participate in discussions. One youth in particular said, I think every member of the committee and every member of the county staff have supported me at one time or another while I was on the committee. Everyone was always patient and willing to share their knowledge and expertise with me. The report finishes with the 2 group projects, and I've said this before, I am just so proud of our youth and the 2 projects that they participated in this year. They could have done 1, they were go-getters, and they did 2. They were very passionate about the Essentials of Voting project, and I know they would have loved to presented the information within the high schools. And if you recall from the county board meeting, that's right when we went into shelter in place. They worked so hard. They conducted all that research. They did create the presentation and shared parts of it with you, the flyer, which you've received, the survey. They were just so grateful that they were able to meet with you at the county board meeting and share that with you, because it gave them closure. And so appreciate that opportunity. And then as far as the recommendations for the supervised visitation room, there too, just want to point out all the research they did. They did receive informational articles from Carrie Wilke, who's the manager of Family and Youth Division of Racine County Human and Health Services, or Human Services, excuse me. And then she did some trauma-informed training with them. So, and then they toured the facility. So they really made informed decisions, and they took time to make those recommendations, to look up the costs of those, and then to share computer renderings. And there was one in your report. And then finally, overall recommendations to be aware of. The youth would really appreciate having the procedures of the formal meetings at orientation. We've included that, but perhaps we need to either do follow-up or spend more time on it. Another one is those specific government terms. I want you to know this year, I did give out a handout so that they will come to you more informed, and should have. And I've also shared the handout a second time at our last group project meeting. And so they have a list. It's quite a comprehensive list of all possible terms, but I won't say they're all terms used during meetings. And that's one thing they ask of their mentors, that if there's a term that may be new to them, and especially at their first meeting, if you could share some or contact them in advance and talk to them about it. A great example is today. On the agenda, we have an ordinance and we have a resolution. First meeting, she may come to you not knowing the difference between the two. And so then that's where they really could use guidance in advance. And that's one of the recommendations they made, is if mentors could meet with mentees in advance and sometimes even quickly touch base before every committee meeting, you know, even if it's a 10-minute quick phone call or an email of, hey, any questions you have now that you're seeing your meeting materials? Are there any terms you're unfamiliar with? That they felt like that would really be helpful. Other than that, there was also the suggestion that they could be involved at the county government board meetings themselves, so that it could move beyond the committee, whether it's their report or they can join in. And I think that's great, that eagerness of, I'm willing to be engaged beyond the committee. So that was something else that they said. So that's this year's annual report. I don't know if anyone has any questions on it.
Thank you so much, Pam, for presenting that. This is Chairwoman Caprillion speaking. I just want to tell you, I think maybe Vice Chair Meyer could probably speak to this just from our longevity here, is that every year I think we do hear about the terms and wanting to know more about the formal proceedings. It's kind of like they're blind going into it. So I thank you for kind of putting something together, because it is asked, you know, every year. So thank you. And then also the desire for the youth to continue beyond the committee meeting into the the county board. Fantastic. That is something, when I was on the city council, I allowed them to see what it was like to be at the committee and then the final step, start, the middle, the final. And so I love that. So maybe it's something that we can discuss with Supervisor Roanhouse. Maybe it could be a consideration. And I don't know, this would be something maybe Willow would want to jump in if that is something that she shares a desire for as well. So Pam, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And may I just share?
Definitely.
May I share a couple announcements too? They're super fast.
Please do.
Oh, thank you. First, just letting you know, November is when we do take attendance. So just wanted you to know that, and that the expectation is that our youth representatives have attended at least 50% of their meetings. So just letting you know that's coming up. Our outreach does begin November 2nd. So we're really excited about that and hoping that we get many nominations. That's less than 2 weeks away. And then you should have received an email today about the asking you if you have received any unsolicited comments about the positive impact that the Youth and Governance program has had on any of your mentees. So we're looking together, getting out the great story of the positive impact that the program has had on youth representatives, former youth representatives. So thank you.
Yes, this is Supervisor and Chairwoman Melissa Caprillion. Again, thank you for that. I did see the one that came in from the past Supervisor Osterman. So that was nice to read. I do see, I'm just going to recognize the committee member first. Vice Chair Meyer, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Pam, for everything that you're doing with the youth and the program. It's very rewarding to see those youth, and they're growing every year more and more and more. One of the things that Chairwoman Melissa mentioned about the different comments and or acronyms was a thing that came to my mind right away. A lot of the committees have different acronyms, and coming on board as a supervisor my first term, you know, the acronyms that everybody's talking all this lingo, and if you don't know the acronyms that go with it, you kind of lost at first until you get, you know, more familiar with it. And with our Health and Human Development Committee, even on the back of our paperwork, we still have the abbreviations for their acronyms and stuff too to help out. So just because there are some overlapping areas and there are some things that can become very confusing when you're trying to keep up with the minutes or keep up with the meeting and keep up with the agenda, what's going on, and then they're talking kind of in a different language. So it does make it a little more difficult at times. One question I do have for you is, with the virtual learning that most of the schools and stuff are going to, do you see a possibility of a hindrance as far as getting applicants for the next class of youth and governance kids? you know, I know they're adapting further and faster than we are sometimes with this virtual material, but is that going to be a hindrance to try to get more kids nominated and or get more kids want to be involved? Because if they're doing so much other things virtual, are they going to have time for something like this? Or will it be harder for some of the kids who may not have the ability to get in front of a computer or get to the library or whatnot to apply or, you know, get involved with the program? It's just a question I had. Thank you.
This is Pam Larson. Yes, I have thought of that, Supervisor Meyer. You know, one of the things, and part of it is I do work with Racine Unified School District, and what I feel better about is now all the youth do have devices, is my understanding, and those who need hotspots have them. So that makes me feel better about that. But here's where I do get concerned. I've spoken with some teachers who say that because of virtual instruction, that not all youth feel comfortable having their cameras on. And so that even though it is now October 20th, that some of them haven't even turned their cameras on, or they've maybe turned it on one quick, you know, for a short period of time and off, and that they wouldn't even recognize necessarily all their youth. So then that does concern me, because how do you make recommendations when youth aren't engaged? And I know there's more ways to engage than just having your camera on, but nonetheless, it has crossed my mind. And then other schools are in session with the in-person and the hybrid. So I think the one thing I will point out, or we'll have to do a wait and see, is will we have to change our deadlines? If we initially put out that call for nominations and all of a sudden we don't have very many, do we want to change that timeline? Or I think that's when we make that decision, and we can hope. So we'll see, but I've thought of that, and I do have some concerns that that could happen this year if teachers feel they aren't knowing their students as intimately as they have in the past.
Thank you. Supervisor Meyer speaking again. I do think that, yes, that they lose some of that one-on-one contact with the virtual, but everybody's doing what they have to now to kind of get by and go forward the best we can, you know, and try to keep things going in a positive direction. So again, thank you.
Chairwoman Caprillion speaking. Thank you for that. And I'm just curious, maybe Willow has a contribution on maybe how she can see how the success and what she feels about this virtual platform, whether it be successful or not.
Of course. For one, I feel like Ms. Larson is doing an amazing job. I know this has been a definite challenge, you know, doing the whole thing virtual, trying to get the youth involved, working the ins and outs of everything. And we had a meeting on, I think it was last month, on our group project. And some people were online and some people were in person, and I was in person. But it was very organized. We all learned a lot. We had a great time. And I've learned a lot already, and I think everything's going amazing. Thank you, Ms. Larson.
Thank you, Willow.
Beautiful. Chairman Caprillion speaking again. I do see, you know, if there's anyone else from the committee, I don't see any hands up from the committee, but I would like to recognize our guest supervisor too as well. Supervisor Spencer, if you had some contribution to discussion, I will go ahead and open that and welcome it. And then I do see Supervisor Dembski had a hand that went up too. So you'll be next. Okay, please.
Thank you. I just want to say what an impressive program this is. I'm really impressed by what the Youth in Governments program is and what it does. I was going to second the idea of getting a list of policies and terms, because as a new supervisor, new to county or city government, that would be very helpful, along with acronyms. I'm all in for getting any of those lists, coming from the Postal Service, where we had probably 1 million acronyms we had to know. It's a shift. So from whatever we're doing into county government, or I'm sure city government, something like that available at swearing in or something would be really helpful orientation. So that's just all I wanted to add.
Chairwoman Caprillion, that's a great addition. So you see, Willow, it's not just the youth who struggle too. It's all those who get elected, especially coming aboard for the first time. So I would like to recognize Supervisor Dembski, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just really quickly, just want to echo what the other supervisors and our youth and governance rep has said. Pam, thanks so much for the amazing program. It's awesome that we have this here in Racine County. It's small, but it's mighty. I definitely, you know, everyone that I've gotten to meet of the young people who have gone through it, just sort of blown away by, and they know more about local government than I knew by the time I was like 30 years old. So I'm always very excited for them and what they're going to go on to do. The last thing I'll say is, you know, Willow's my mentee. Willow's an absolute rock star. So aside from the young people getting to benefit from this, Racine County and the Racine County government really gets to benefit from having these young rock stars inform our process and get involved early on, hopefully to continue being involved well into their life. So thank you to Willow and to you for what you've been doing.
Thanks so much. You're amazing.
Chairwoman Caprillion again, you articulate so well, Supervisor Dembski. Thank you for that. Is there anyone else? Supervisor Meyer, I see your hand is still up. Is that just from the last time, or would you like to speak again?
I'm sorry. I'll take it down.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. All right. If there is no other discussion on this, this is just for informational sake. So thank you so much for presenting to us, Pam, and we'll just look forward to future communications from you, because the next thing will be asked is for us to try to find those that could be nominated. So please, committee, I would hope that this committee is where the bulk of our nominations would come from, just because we oversee the youth and governance program. So thank you. Pam, was there any other additions before we move on in the agenda?
Nope, just thank you so much for your continued support.
Absolutely. You make it easy for us. Thank you. So we do have one other item on the agenda. I'm just going to have to switch over to my screen, so I apologize as I look away here, but the next item on the agenda is the communication and referrals from the county board. We have one item, and this is a resolution from Brown County requesting that the state senate convene to address 13 water bill passed by the state assembly. So again, these items are a receive and file, and just note if this is something that you are interested in, that is something you can dig up or something that we need to adhere to, we would create our own and bring it forward. So these are great insight to what's kind of going on around the county. So with that, I would ask for a motion.
Supervisor Dembski, move to receive and file.
Thank you. We have a second? Okay, very good. We have Supervisor Dembski moving, Supervisor Maldonado with the second. If there is no discussion, I'm going to ask for a vote. I'm going to ask Youth and Governance to please vote first. Willow, how do you wish to vote?
Aye, I agree.
Thank you so much. Now to the committee, all those in favor, please feel free to raise your hand at this time. I see we are all in favor. That concludes our agenda. Thank you so much, all the supervisors. And this is being recorded. MT will work her magic in the background and be sure to get that to us. Again, I'm just going to ask to look forward to look for communications from me, really talking a little bit more about a possible 6:30 start. I will be respectful for all your input that you bring in during that time. So thank you. And just a motion to adjourn is in order.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Supervisor Smetana. Do we have a quick second?
Second.
Second.
All right, I'm going to call this meeting adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you. Bye, Willow.
See y'all.
Thank you, MT.